right, folks, buckle up because we're driving headfirst into the cultural cage match of our time, parental rights in education. Look, if you think the future of America is just going to magically sort itself out while we binge watch Netflix and scroll on X, you're absolutely dreaming. The backbone of this country, hell, the backbone of civilization, is strong mothers. Moms who don't mess around, who will stare down a school board like a grizzly bear threatening their cubs. These women are the glue holding our families, our values, our whole dang society together. They're raising the next generation of patriots, thinkers, and doers, and they definitely don't need some bureaucrat in a cheap suit telling them how to do it. But let's be real, moms and dads are both under attack. From woke curriculum sneaking into classrooms to big tech brainwashing our kids faster than you can say critical race theory. Parents are fighting a war on every single front. Schools, by the way, and teachers are supposed to be partners, not propaganda mills. Cooperation between parents and teachers, that's the dream. But it's got to be a two-way street. Respect, not resentment. We're not here to burn down the entire system. We're here to take it back, to make sure our kids learn how to think, not what to think. Because if we lose this fight, we lose the soul of America. And nobody gets this better than the woman we've got on the show today. She's a mom, a warrior, and a co-founder of the movement that's got the left clutching their pearls. My incredibly talented and very good friend, Tiffany Justice, co-founder of Moms for Liberty and senior fellow at Heritage Foundation, is here to break down this fight, how parents are standing up, fighting back, and reminding everyone who's really in charge of our kids. So let's get into it with Tiffany Justice. Tiffany, welcome to the Terry Schilling Show.
Oh, I'm so excited to join you, Terry. Congratulations on this new podcast.
Thank you so much. It's the 4th episode, so we're going to keep it going as long as my friends like you are willing to come on. I'm going to get into my Mood versus Taylor. That's obviously an incredibly important case, but I also like to take the opportunity with, I know you, we work together. We've been working together for almost 5 years now. But I want you to explain to the listeners, what made you be one of the co-founders of Moms for Liberty? What was the spark that really got you into this fight?
I'm a mom of 4, as you said, been married for a little over 20 years. And in 2016, I decided to run for school board. I had 4 kids in 3 different public schools. And once I got in there, Terry, I saw the government overreach that was happening, the union interference that was stopping innovation. I was shocked. Honestly, I had no idea how much power unions had in the public schools that my kids were going to. Why were my kids eating lunch at 10:30? I found out it was because it was written in a bargaining contract. That really blew my mind. So I got in there and I served on school board. I was a disruptor. I know that doesn't come as a surprise to you or anyone listening if they've seen me for a little while, but I asked a lot of questions, a lot of why are we doing this way if it's not working? That wasn't always appreciated. The system does not like disruptors. I was painted as a chaos agent. I know a lot of parents listening will probably say, oh yeah, we know how that feels, right? And then COVID happened. And I really, the government overreach and the violation of parental rights went on overdrive. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And the most concerning thing about it was that there were parents across the country that weren't saying no. There were parents who, it seemed like they almost forgot the fact that they had this fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. And the government couldn't just take that away because they said they had a compelling interest to do so. And so Moms for Liberty was founded. My 4-year term on school board ended November of 2020. We founded Moms for Liberty January 1st of 2021. And then, as you said, been working with you since then to really just rally moms and dads. And what we found was that, it just takes a courageous leader in the community to stand up. If you feel a certain way, you're not the only one. And once we were able to start rallying parents, we saw amazing leadership rise up all over the country.
No, I think that's exactly right. That was, APP was still doing a bunch of other issues not really related to parental rights at the time. But one thing I wanted to dig into, I like to have candid conversations. I think that's what most people want to hear. And when I was first really getting into these fights, I was having to travel all over the country, and balancing my role as a father was incredibly difficult. I had to do fun things like institute days like Dadder Day, right? So on Saturdays, they do their chores, and then we'll go to the movies or get, donuts. We'll do some type of special activity. I'm wondering how because sometimes I see you all over the place and you're so involved in all these fights. I do wonder how you as a mom and other moms in the movement balance motherhood and all the advocacy work I understand why it's justified, but like, do you have a special trick? Like, how do you stay on top of your kids and make sure that things don't run off the rails?
Yeah, I think my special trick is my husband. I'm married very well. He's an amazing father and dad and a true partner in life. He's my best friend. And so I think that has been the most important thing. You know, we always put our marriage first. Even when we had kids, our relationship with each other is the most important thing, because without that, honestly, your family doesn't exist, you know? So we really prioritized each other and our children. And there was just a moment during COVID when Mark and I looked at each other, that's my husband, and we were just like, if I don't go do this, who's going to go do it, right? I had this kind of like, you know, baptism by fire on school boards, seeing this lack of leadership. Even during COVID, I was sitting on the school board with these so-called Republicans who were just basically abdicating their authority to bureaucrats because they were scared to make any decisions. And so it just seemed like this was the moment in time that if I didn't, you know, start Moms for Liberty, if we didn't give it everything that we had to try to save our country, that our kids' future would be really bleak. And so, you know, Mark, God bless him, like held down the fort. When I'm gone, he still cooks family dinner. I think that's one of the most important things that we've ever really done in our house. When I'm home, when he's home, there's dinner on the table every night, and the kids are expected to join us. And that's kind of the glue that keeps us together. So I think the secret is a really great husband.
I think that's probably right. Look, I've noticed that, you know, things are a lot more difficult when you're not getting along with your spouse. Like, it's like the one place of refuge in your entire life is supposed to be with your family. And that should be your safe place, is your home. I actually think there's a lot related to why these college kids are demanding a safe space everywhere they go, because they didn't come from good families. But you know, it's interesting because the kids, if you're not doing your family right, if you're not doing your marriage right, the kids can actually become dividers in your family if you're not careful. So I commend you and I respect you for prioritizing the marriage first, because that absolutely is true. Like, I know, I'll just tell you, I noticed this thing where my wife and I, when we were in our earliest stage of marriage, you know, the kids would screw something up and it would almost like drive a divide between us two. Yeah. And we basically united together against the children, because the children were the problem. And so once we did that, and we also started instituting like, you know, weekly date nights, and we go on walks together. It's so important. But the other thing I want to talk with you about is something I'm currently struggling with is how do you manage being, you know, because you are a lightning rod, you are a disruptor, and I think that's the best thing about you. But how do you manage that with your family and your kids? Like, how are they dealing with it all? Are they, you know, I imagine they're probably, you know, fierce warriors like you are, but how do they handle all of the negative and positive attention that you get from wading into these crazy fights?
Yeah, they're really proud of me now. And, you know, I really think President Trump has captured the attention of the youth. And my kids are 13, 15, 17, and 20.
Kids love him.
They love him. They do. They think he's awesome. So, you know, that's been really great, because, you know, he is a culture warrior, and we are in the middle of a cultural revolution. And luckily he has captured the attention of the youth. Now, that being said, when I was on school board, it was hard. There were union members who targeted my kids in classrooms. I had one child who had a teacher who really disliked me and was made it very difficult on my son in the classroom, especially during COVID. And I'll just say, for moms and dads that are standing up in your local community, that's the hardest thing to do. It's not standing on the national stage and having Scott Pelley or Randy Weingarten call me names. I could care less about that. I really could. Talk about me on The View all you want, Sunny Hostin. But, you know, when it's in your own community, when your kids are dealing with, you know, going to this, I had someone at the supermarket once come up to me, and it was actually one of my youngest son's birthday, and said, basically called me a Nazi book banner. You know, when it's happening in your own community, that gets to be a little bit harder. So I just really commend moms and dads who do stand up locally, because that's the harder part. I think it hits you harder. That's supposed to be your community where you live and raise your children and go to church. And so, yeah, the national stuff, I just, you know me. I like it. If they're not talking about me, what was it that P.T. Barnum said? As long as they're spelling my name right.
That's right. Yeah. All right, let's dig into this Mahmoud versus Taylor case. You've been on the front lines there for quite some time. Can we play clip A and clip B, please?
Well, the plaintiffs here are not asking the school to change its curriculum. They're just saying, look, we want out. Why isn't that feasible? What is the big deal about allowing them to opt out of this?
When the government forces people to choose between violating sincerely held religious beliefs or forgoing a public benefit, that burdens religious exercise. In Fulton, offering foster care contracts only to groups that would certify same-sex couples burden groups that believe marriage is only between a man and a woman. In Sherbert, offering unemployment benefits only to people willing to work Saturdays burden those for whom Saturday is a Sabbath. Here, Montgomery County offers a free public education to parents only if their children use books featuring same-sex relationships and transgender issues. That burdens parents of multiple faiths whose religious duty is to shield their young children from such content. Public schools routinely accommodate those burdens with opt-outs, which respect families of many faiths and backgrounds. Several states allow opt-outs from any learning material on religious grounds. Montgomery County allows many other opt-outs, just not here. I welcome the court's questions.
So those two clips were from the Supreme Court hearing, Mahmoud versus Taylor. I want to also pull up image A and then image B, because these issues of parental rights and education and being able to opt your children out of these problematic curriculum and programs is exceptionally popular. Right. These are in the 70 percentile, nearing 80 percentile of support from the American people. You really don't see this level of support from a lot of the issues that we're constantly talking about and debating in our country. But these are very bipartisan. The support is broad. It's even high amongst Democrats. So, Tiffany, can you tell me, first of all, give me a rundown of the case, and then I want to dig into what do you think the motivation is here? Because it's inexplicable. Like, I would never advise a candidate that, I'm in politics. That's my, my heart and soul is. I would never advise a candidate to take the 20% angle of any issue unless it was absolutely necessary. But so what's the motivating factor here? Give us a rundown of the case, and then we'll get into why this is happening.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head and said, unless it was absolutely necessary, and we're in the middle of a cultural revolution, and they have to drive a wedge between the parent and the child and stop us from passing on our tradition to our children in order for the left to be able to conquer Western civilization. So you are correct. It is absolutely necessary for them to do that. That's why they're doing it. The first clip you played, I believe, was Justice Alito. The second was the Solicitor General. I believe her last name was Harris. She did an excellent job laying out the case. Yeah, a very interesting situation in Montgomery County. Over a year ago, September, I believe, of 2024, we went in and did a 2023, actually. I have to go back and look. We went in and did a town hall in Montgomery County where we brought parents together, Muslim parents, Christian parents, Jewish parents, parents who were atheists or didn't have any religion in their lives. And we heard from them about what was happening in Montgomery County. Now, there was a case a while ago. It was, I think it was Jane and John Doe versus Montgomery County. Parents had stood up and said, listen, we're very concerned that there's social transitioning happening in schools, secret social transitioning when the school is using a different name and pronouns for children in the classroom, and we don't like it. We're concerned that it's going to affect our child. And the court basically said, you don't have standing here because your child hasn't been harmed before. That's a problem. I mean, as a parent, Terry, I'll just say to you, I use this analogy all the time. I'll use it again. You don't put a bike helmet on your kid because they've been hurt on the bike before. You put a bike helmet on them because you know there's the potential for them to get hurt. And this idea that in our courts, in our schools, in fact, that our child has to meet harm before we're actively able to stop that harm from happening kind of blows my mind. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, and then I can get into the case a bit more.
No, I get it. They're in the middle of a revolution. But what happens when the dog catches the car, I guess, is what I'm more interested in. I think my take on it, I think you hit the nail on the head. But I think that they see this as a major opportunity that they'll never get back again, possibly, if they don't win here, right? Like, they have an opportunity to not just take away Americans' right to be religious and practice that religion in the public square, but also parental rights. Like, if they can drive these wedges in between parents and their, for lack of a better word, ownership and obligation to their children, they can take away everyone's rights, right? Because no relationship is more central or primal even than the relationship that a mother has to their child or a father and mother have to their children. Yep. And that is the most sacred of all relationships besides that of us and God. But let's just get into the case. So tell the audience, because a lot of them, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's like every day there's something new in the news. So let's just give a quick briefer on what's going on in this case and how we got here.
Sure. So parents were able to opt out of this Pride Storybook collection that is being used throughout the day. It is now part of the English language arts curriculum. That means that anytime during your second grader's day, these books could be brought into the classroom. The teacher can read the books in the classroom, and parents wouldn't be able to pull their kids out of it. Well, parents started getting really concerned about that and trying to opt their kids out of this instruction. They didn't want their children being told that you could be a boy or a girl or neither or both, or your pronouns can change from day to day. And I'm sure we'll get into gender ideology and the fact it has no place in public schools at all to begin with.
Can I just say real quick before you go on? This whole case is preposterous.
Yes.
We're talking about whether or not parents have a right to opt out of programs and curriculum that shouldn't be in classrooms regardless, right? This shouldn't be within 500 feet of a school, and anyone pushing this shouldn't be allowed within 500 feet of a school. The idea that parents can't opt their children out of this, it really says how far the system's fallen, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So parents could opt their kids out. Then the school decided, nope, too many opt-outs. We can't handle the volume.
Which is no more, right? You're like, we have too many opt-outs. Well, maybe it's a really bad curriculum that shouldn't be instituted.
Agree. But then they decide no more opt-outs. And now parents get really upset. So we did that town hall. We heard from parents on the ground that were very concerned. This lawsuit gets filed for parents to be able to opt out. They lose in the lower court. And then it goes to the Fourth Circuit. They lose that case. And now we end up at the Supreme Court where we hear, and I'll be honest, Terry, it was like really refreshing for me to hear. It was vindicating, actually, to hear Alito and Gorsuch and Roberts and Kavanaugh and Barrett and even Kagan, who said, normally known for being a pretty liberal or left-leaning judge, she said, I can imagine that it's not just religious parents who might have a problem with this material. Some parents might have a problem because it's just age inappropriate. So to hear them reading from the books and then to have the Montgomery County lawyer saying, oh, well, no, it's not bondage. It's leather and it's a jacket in the Pride Puppy Parade. And it's not a sex worker, Justice Roberts. It's just a drag queen. And we need those drag queens so we can teach civility, was like a crock, right? It's such a crock for them to say that. And so, all of America got to hear a 2-hour oral arguments in this case where I think Eric Baxter of the Beckett Fund, they are representing the parents in Montgomery County, did an excellent job laying out the case. But for those of us like you and me and many other people in America that have been fighting this ridiculous pseudoscientific nonsense called gender ideology, the idea that there's something other than a man or a woman, and I say it all the time, I'll say it again, there is no such thing as transgender. It's not a thing. There's no such thing as a transgender child or adult. There are adults who have a mental distress, and we should help them to feel comfortable in their biological sex. We shouldn't be saying, okay, we're going to affirm something that can never actually come to be. You can't change your sex. And yet, it's being taught in our public schools. So there was this question, Terry, about, where's the line? Jackson asked this question. Sotomayor asked this question. Where's the line? Sotomayor said something about, conflating. What if parents don't want their children to learn about interracial marriage? Another crock, right? But there was this line about like, where's the line going to be? And my question back to the justices truly is this. Where's the line between teaching truth and a lie in public school? If you can teach gender ideology, which is a complete lie, then where's the line? What other lies can the public school system start teaching our kids?
That's right. And there's no bigger lie than telling little kids that men can have babies and that women can have Johnsons. It's just absolutely preposterous. It's just egregious. But speaking of radical left-wingers, I want to play clip C of my least favorite left-wing Looney Tune, Randy Weingarten.
Yeah. Just as an example, my pronouns are like the weather. They change depending on how I feel, and that's okay because they're my words. Sometimes I use all the pronouns I can think of, just as one example here.
Let me put it this way,
Go ahead.
Martha, and I think that this will be shocking to you. These would not be the books I would be reading as a classroom teacher to kids who are 4 to 6 years old.
Wow. Wow. I mean, look, it's a rare moment of candor, I think, that we're seeing. And look, Tiffany, I will say, like, I do like to give the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of these politicians, especially at the national level, they've never actually looked at these books. They've never actually seen what we're putting in front of children. Because, like you said earlier, or like the Supreme Court justices said earlier, you really don't have to be like a Puritan or some type of fundamentalist Christian to oppose this stuff. I think actually you can be like a porn star and not want this type of stuff in your kid's classroom. So what's going on with Randy here? Has she seen the polling, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the first point is really important. When we started Moms for Liberty in general, like, I'm not a Puritan, and there are a lot of things I do with my husband on a Saturday morning before I come out and make pancakes, right? I don't talk to the kids about that stuff. So, I think you're right. I think adults and children are different, and we used to know that in America. There used to be such a thing as age-appropriate content. We have movie ratings, for example. I brought up to my good friend Joy Reid when I was on there. I have no idea why all of a sudden there's some confusion about what's appropriate for kids versus adults. Randy, this is really interesting. So I think it's a couple tells here. She says to Martha, I think you'll be shocked to hear this. Yeah, Randy, because you've literally been shoving sexually explicit content down our kids' throats and calling us book banners for not wanting these books in school. So yeah, little shocking.
A little shocked, yeah.
Little shocking. And then Justice Jackson made a comment where she said, parents don't like this stuff happening in school. They should just take them out of school and send them somewhere else. Well, first of all, that's not really an option for a lot of Maryland parents. They don't have school choice in Maryland. But I think this was really the issue. This is why Randy jumped up and got on Martha McCallum and had to address this stuff and start walking back the teachers union's position, because she knows that they're going to lose this case. And she knows that this is an 80-20 issue. And I think it's finally dawning on them the fact that they've gone too far. Thank God the left never knows when to stop. First of all, right? They are their own worst enemy because they double down every time. But Randy's seeing the writing on the wall, and Justice Jackson making that commentary saying if parents don't like it, they should just take their kids out of public school was the best argument for school choice. I would imagine at some point there will be a case that will make its way up to the Supreme Court regarding school choice and the parents' ability to take their taxpayer money to apply it to a school of their choosing that reflects their family's values and really unfolds the full potential academically of their child. And those words by Justice Jackson are going to come back to haunt her, the left, the Democrats, and Randy Weingarten and the teachers union especially, I think.
Well, when Ketanji Brown Jackson said that about, they don't have to go to the school, right, that's the equivalent of, saying let them eat cake. It's so dismissive. It takes no consideration to the fact that there's a lot of working class families out there that struggle with having to pay both their property taxes and affording those, but then also on top of that, post-tax tuition costs every single month. I mean, some of these tuition levels, even if you're just at a normal, like regular base Catholic school here in Northern Virginia, it's the same as a mortgage, basically. It's egregious. It's let them eat cake.
As our good friend Corey DeAngelis said, he posted immediately after, Ketanji Brown Jackson sent her kids to private school.
That you find that almost every single time. If you find an opponent of school choice or someone that wants to support the teachers unions, you can almost guarantee that they're not sending their kids to public schools. And it's because only a third of kids in public schools can read or do math at grade level. It's not rocket science. But I will say, I wanted to get into Colorado. I'm sure you're up to speed on that. It seems like these blue states are getting crazier. Colorado has this bill that makes misgendering a discriminatory act. Can we play clip D, please?
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1312. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. House Bill 1312 has passed.
Tiffany, what's going on here? Why are the blue states like this doing? I mean, it's obvious that like misgendering is like not even a real thing, but these people obviously believe it is. What's going on here? Why are they continuing down this losing road? Is Colorado just that far gone?
Well, I mean, I saw a post from a woman who lives in Colorado. She thinks the left has gone too far now, and they're going to ultimately lose. So we can hope and pray for that. In Colorado, there's this bill. They have a Senate majority of Democrats and House majority of Democrats. It passed the House and the Senate. It will be heard in the Senate, but I have no doubt it's passing. They want to say that if you're not willing to affirm your child's want of changing their gender, that you can lose custody of your child. And when I first heard about gender ideology and really got into how pervasive it was from our good friend Chris Elston, Billboard Chris, who lives in Vancouver. And he joined a Twitter space that I was running, and he said that all of the members of parliament had unanimously voted to declare it a crime punishable by fine or jail time to not affirm your child's want of changing their gender. And so we're seeing that. He said it was coming to America. He was absolutely right. We saw a similar bill in California that passed through the legislature, but Governor Newsom, as President Trump calls him, vetoed it because he has his eyes set on the White House. And as you said, I'm sure he has political, helpers who told him, hey, man, do not sign this bill into law. This is going to haunt you in the future. And so, my hope is that Jared Polis is going to see the same thing, the governor of Colorado. But man, really parental rights under attack. Moms for Liberty is doing a town hall coming up in Colorado. They'll have some representatives there. One of our great moms, Brandy Bradley, is in the House there and voted against this bill, and she'll be speaking, as well as some other really amazing moms. There's a lot of secret social transition happening in Colorado in the schools, and it's really, it's really sad, honestly, because there are a lot of moms and dads from California that moved to Colorado during COVID, trying to escape the lockdowns and the mandates. I know a friend from New York had moved to Colorado, and we're seeing Colorado, certainly follow the same path as California. Very, very scary and concerning for Colorado parents and Americans. The best thing that you can do is speak out on this issue and make your voices heard, put pressure on that governor and tell him, this is a losing proposition for you, sir. Do not sign this bill into law.
Well, I also think that we have to reject the premise entirely. It's not a parent's job to blindly affirm their children and everything. It's a parent's job to form your child, to correct them when they're doing wrong things, and to let them know, especially if they're, for example, playing in the middle of the street. You don't affirm them playing in the middle of the street, especially if there's a big giant bus coming down the road. Right? Your job as a parent is to correct your children, to form them, to encourage them when they do good, encourage them when they do right. But our number one job is to correct them. And I was a bad kid. My parents had to correct me all the time, and I absolutely love them for it. And I think it all comes down to these people hate their dads. That is at the driving force of it. They had absent fathers. They didn't have good fathers involved, probably had distant mothers, but it's obvious that they hate their own families, especially their fathers, and they're acting out here.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a fatherhood crisis in this country. James Lindsay, a friend of ours, has made the comment before that femininity is a luxury that exists when strong men exist. And so, right. We've seen a real breakdown there in our country. And there are a lot of questions as to why that is. I'll just say this, and then we should talk about dads and fathers. When people talk about social transition in school and they say oh, what's the harm? You just call the kid by the name they want. You just use the pronouns, they just want to make them feel included and accepted. I when I was 12 years old, I decided to be a vegetarian. I was very dug in, Terry. I was going to be the best vegetarian. I wasn't going to let, not a piece of meat was going to pass through my lips until 6 months later when I decided that I wasn't going to be a vegetarian anymore. And then I had to break it to everyone that I had, told, everyone in my life, right, all my friends, that I wasn't a vegetarian anymore as I, ate my turkey sandwich. And it was embarrassing. And so I remember that. I can remember that shame of thinking gosh, I was so dug in and now I'm changing my mind. Now, imagine you're a kid and you have this peer influence at your school, right? And you've decided, well, my name isn't Tiffany anymore. My name's going to be Tommy. And I'm not really a girl. I'm a boy, and I was born that way. And I just was confused about it. I didn't feel comfortable to really show myself. And you go through this process. And then everyone at the school is like, wow, this is so great. You're so awesome and brave. And, a lot of times this happens with kids who are autistic or autistic kids, vulnerable kids, right? Who don't have a lot of friends, and all of a sudden they're celebrated. How do you come back from that? How do you go to school and say, actually, I made a mistake. I'm still a girl. You don't. You dig in deeper and deeper and deeper. So this idea of social transition at school is not harmless. It is immediate harm. It is schools, getting kids to lead a double life, keeping secrets from parents. You and I mean, I tell my kids all the time, if someone tells you to keep a secret from me, you come and tell me right away, right? We call these people groomers and predators who keep secrets, who tell kids to keep secrets from their parents. So I just want to be really clear. Social transition in school is absolutely child abuse and has to stop.
Yeah. Well, let's get into dads, because I think we're nearing our time. Where are I would love to see more dads involved. What are you seeing from your experience in the whole mama bear movement? Are more dads getting involved? Are you encouraged? Are you optimistic? Or does a lot more work need to get done to get them engaged?
Yeah, when we started Moms for Liberty, it was really important that it was Moms for Liberty. You know, we felt really passionately about the fact that it was moms who needed to get involved and
Tiffany,
stand
can I
up.
say something real quick?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's exactly right. Like, we lost this very key truth about women in society, which is that women ran all of our cultural institutions before they were all flooding the workforce, right? It wasn't, the left tries to paint this picture, this narrative from the feminists that before women had the right to vote and before women started going into the workforce en masse, that they would just sit at home and knit sweaters and prepare lunches and dinners and do laundry. That's not true. And I know that from talking to the very strong women that have been running our families for years. Women would do all that stuff, but they'd get bored. They'd go run the local tennis club. They'd go volunteer at the library. They do reading programs. But as one thing what was so beautiful about the movement that you started is that it started getting women engaged in the best possible way in our society, which is upholding our civic institutions. I just want to say that it was a genius idea. It was exactly what Phyllis Schlafly tapped into, which, by the way, I absolutely view you as like the 21st century version of Phyllis. And
That's
I think
an
you're
honor. She was
killing
a pretty
it.
incredible woman, so thank you for that.
She is, but all right. Anyway, I interrupted you, but I really just want to make that point because women were not barefoot and pregnant, stuck at home, chained to the stove. They were actually running our local society and our civic societies, our PTA meetings, all of that. And you helped bring that back. And I think that there's going to be a lot of benefits from that movement that you started from now until Kingdom Come.
Thank you for that. And I agree with you. I think it's incredibly important. And moms were in schools volunteering too, right? We were like up in their business, and that stopped as well as more women entered the workforce. We weren't in those schools as much, and it created this space for the schools to be taken from us. And it's very interesting. I think it was actually part of the left's plan. But yeah, there were people who said like, well, what about Parents for Justice? Or what about, what if you should start Dads for Liberty, or, Dads for Parents for Liberty. And, it was interesting. I made jokes, but I was kind of serious. And I said, the moms are willing to have conversations with you right now, I would say to the school board. When the dads come, they're not going to be as interested in talking to you, honestly. And I think that was just true. Dads are pretty angry about a lot of what is happening. You see fathers get up and read from a lot of the explicit content in the books at the school board libraries. It's one thing for a mom to come up and do it, but man, you get you or John M. and Chukwu to go and read from these books in front of a school board. They do not. I've been in a school board meeting, my own school board meeting, where John came and read from the books. They do not know what to do with him. And so, go ahead.
There's a clip of a father. I just want to get to the, I don't want to skip it. Can we play clip E, please? And I'd like to have you react to it. We are starting to see a lot of these dads go up and make their presence known. I think that's a crucial next step because, that's what used to run our society, was this fear of pissing off fathers, especially at the school level. So I don't know. I hope that more fathers are getting engaged, and it sounds like you see that they are starting to get more engaged.
They are getting more engaged. And I think you've been a big part of that too. I think dads stepping up and saying like, hey guys, I know you're really busy. I know that you have a lot of responsibilities and pressure on you. You know, the economy has been tough under Joe Biden, right? We've had rampant inflation. It's been harder to make ends meet, but we have to dig back into our families. And so I absolutely think that dads are getting more involved. You know, Terry, I've watched as fathers have been kind of pushed out of the sphere of like influence when it comes to kids, right? On the abortion issue, the feminists said, oh, this isn't a man's issue. This is a woman's issue. My body, my choice, right? Well, it's your kid too. I've talked to dads or I've talked to men who were in a relationship with someone and the woman aborted the baby, and the heartbreak that they share about that is, it's very difficult. And I feel for them because they weren't a part of making that choice. Even on the social transition stuff, we've seen moms that are transitioning their kids and gender transition, and the dads are basically, helpless to stop it, right? Because women generally get custody and when you're dealing with, divorce. And so it's just been really interesting to watch men pushed out of the influence of kids. And again, we need dads, we need strong fathers. There was an article written in Reality's Last Stand that I'll send to you by a gentleman who was talking about the importance of ritual when it comes to raising boys, and how puberty is very different between boys and girls, and even like the Boy Scouts, and how the Boy Scouts have changed so much. And all of a sudden it wasn't just about boys, and it wasn't about learning skills and mastery and camaraderie. They let girls in, and the whole mission changed, and it was a lot about feelings, and boys and girls are different. That's just the bottom line. As a mom of 4 kids, 1 girl, 3 boys, boys are different, and we need to stop pretending like all kids are the same, like men and women are the same. We need to start appreciating the differences and how complementary we are.
That is the truth, right? And that's the beauty of the whole system, is that men need women and women need men. It's just reality. And you can pretend that that's not true, but that is, for the vast majority of not just American history, but of human history, men and women have always needed each other. And that's not going to change regardless of how many indoctrination programs you institute across the world. You'll just have really bad problems as a result of denying that truth.
Yeah.
Tiffany, any final thoughts? And by the way, where can people find you online, and how do they get involved and help out this movement?
Yeah, so you can follow me on X. It's primarily where I engage on social media. It's at @4 Tiffany Justice. As you said, I'm a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I'm really excited to be there. We're launching a parental rights network, so there'll be a landing page going up at the beginning of May. Terry, you're going to be a big part of that on the steering committee with some other leaders across the United States, and we're just going to try to put this parental rights movement on a hyperdrive. And so I'm really excited that the Heritage Foundation is willing to engage boldly in all of these different cultural issues. They want to be a big part of making sure that family stays strong in America. So follow me for hot takes on Supreme Court cases, and definitely going to be trying to really uplift a lot of different groups and movements and parents across the country that are making big strides fighting against this war on family in America.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us. I want to have you back on, and yes, I'm definitely going to be involved in this parental rights network. Anything from here. Look, I think Kevin Roberts has put together a fantastic team. You've got Jay Richards over there with you, and there's so many more. It's really amazing to see and be a part of, and we're just so lucky to have you. So I want to have you come back on later. I know that there's going to be more stuff to talk about with parental rights, especially as it comes to education. So thank you so much for joining me, Tiffany. Thanks for being a great friend, and thanks for what you're doing for our country.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, and that has been the latest edition of the Terry Schilling Show, episode 4. It's going great. All of my great friends who are super talented and smart and making a real difference in this country are actually excited to join. And so we're excited to have them. We're going to keep this rolling, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.